set. Go right ahead and get started. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, James. Hi, everybody. I'm Henry Lian, and I'm here today to talk to you about the power of enthusiasm in author branding. The first thing I'm going to say is an apology. I've got, if you hear bird sounds, it's because I've got these two little birds. I adopted these two little parrots because they were being neglected, and I don't believe in caging things that can fly. So they're used to flying around my house, and they're locked in the bathroom right now, and they're punishing me to let me know they're really not happy about being locked in there. So please forgive me if there are any bird sounds. Now, what I've just done right there, besides warning you about the sounds, is I've bought some goodwill for myself as a presenter. And this is a theme that's going to run through this presentation. I'm going to do something, and then I'm going to bring out the X-ray and show you why I did it. That is a very real reason why I gave that caveat at the beginning, but it also just buys me a little bit of goodwill so that people will forgive any technical shortcomings of this presentation because of the format and the location. So that, again, is going to be a running theme throughout this presentation. I will do or say something, and then I will step back and give you the explanation for why I did it. So first off, thanks for coming to this. I know that there are a lot of choices in the programming, so thank you for coming to this. It's something that I believe in because I think it's something that is never taught to authors. The need for author branding is very real, and there are a couple of reasons for that. The first one is that publishers expect authors to do an enormous amount of their own promotion. Even if you're with a big publisher, even if you're a lead title, I was both of those things with my debut book. And I was quite startled at how much my publisher expected for me to do of my own promotion. And we didn't come into this business to be publicity agents. We didn't come into this to be promoters or showmen or showwomen. We came to create, but unfortunately, this is a job that is hyphenated. And I'm here to talk to you about some ways to make the other part of that hyphenate, the author promoter part of it, a little less painful, especially for people that are naturally shy. So the importance of branding, author branding, is because the publisher is going to expect you to do a lot of your promotion, and you'll get a sense of that early on. For those of you who are published authors, you'll get the questionnaires, and you'll get the conversations with your publicist. You get assigned to a publicist, get assigned to a marketing team, and you kind of expect that they will take care of it. They don't, and they can only do so much. They have a lot on their plates, and they are understaffed, and they try their very best, and they do some things that you can't, but there are many, many things that they expect you to do. And it can be a full-time job trying to promote yourself as an author. And one of the things that I realized as I've been through this process, and I'm fairly new to this, my first novel came out with Macmillan in 2018, and so it's been fairly recent, but I did have to hit the ground running because I realized that there was a lot that nobody was telling me. And one of the things that I realized is that there aren't too many authors out there, and there aren't too many books. It's that we don't know how to identify the ones that we really would love to read. And that's the larger problem. And I think authors have an opportunity to assist that process. Authors are wordsmiths. We're really good at writing characters. We're really good at creating compelling descriptions, but seemingly not when the character is one's own self or when the description is about one's own self. And I think that there's some tricks to get around that. I think that we are also taught as artists to be humble and to be sensitive, and often it's the most intelligent people in the room who have the most self-doubt. I absolutely feel you on that, and I think that there's some tricks to get around that. Before I get into that, let's talk about creating your brand as an author. You need to identify what your brand is, and I mean, that sounds so fucking corporate. I'm sorry, am I allowed to swear? This is getting put on YouTube, right? Sorry, bleep that. It sounds so corporate. It sounds so cynical. It's not what I would prefer to be doing with my time, but there are some things that you need to keep in mind. For right now, forget about what your ideal reading audience is. We're just talking about you and your essence as a person and as an artist. So ask yourself, what makes your writing special? What makes you special? Those are kind of flippant questions, because many people will immediately recoil from those questions and say, well, but what if I don't think I'm special? What if I don't think my writing is very special? And here is the most important wisdom that I've learned in my 50 years of life so far. It's more important to be good than it is to be special. And that's so important. I'm going to say it again. It's more important to be good than it is to be special. And if you lean into the good, you're going to find ways to express your essence as an author brand. So I would suggest that we stop thinking, when we're talking about these questions, stop thinking about yourself and what your feelings are in response to these questions. And I would ask yourself, what do you care about the most? Is there a cause you are passionate about? Does that manifest in your writing? What do you care about the most? And if you are not a politically active person or passionate about a particular cause, that's okay. Ask yourself, what do you love the most? And another way to ask yourself that is, what would you want to spend time talking about, thinking about, conversing with other people about, if you didn't have to do author promotion or whatever? What would be your, what would be your Reddit subreddit that you would read again and again obsessively? Identify those things, the things that you care about, the things that you love, because you're going to be leaning into those as you develop your author brand. So here's a little game that we can play, and it can help you complete this exercise. Ask yourself, what are you proudest of? Ask yourself if there's a particular thing or a phrase that you say that nobody else says, that you might get gently ribbed on by your family and close friends. We're just looking for nooks and crannies to hang onto to differentiate you. If any of you have done online dating, take a look at your online dating profile. That's a very confronting task, and it's an unusual exercise, an uncomfortable exercise, but that might help you locate the things that you felt important enough to express publicly into the void. And ask yourself how you would describe yourself as a character in a middle grade novel. So for those of you who don't know what middle grade is, Harry Potter is middle grade, Hunger Games is YA. So ask yourself, when you were a precocious 11-year-old and you were reading Harriet the Spy or whatever, get yourself in the mindset of those books and ask yourself how you would have introduced yourself as a character. The reason that I say middle grade is that it emphasizes, we could very easily turn dark with this when we try to describe ourselves, and we could just layer flaws and idiosyncrasies and shortcomings and fears and doubts onto it. Those things usually don't fly in the middle grade novel, at least not on first introduction of a character. So that's why I'm saying, ask yourself how you would describe yourself as a character in a middle grade novel, because you're going to be emphasizing the light and the lovability. Those are things that define middle grade. So try that exercise. But here's the best exercise in trying to identify your essence. What is the best compliment anyone has ever paid you? Okay, again, that's so important. I'm going to say it again. What is the best compliment anyone has ever paid you? So start thinking about those things as we're talking about developing your author brand. And now we're going to get into the idea of the imposter syndrome. How do you get around it? Because so many of us, we are able to create, we're able to observe, and we're able to give people new eyes to see the world because we're sensitive. And because we're sensitive, we can be filled with self-doubt. We can be very shy. We can have a lot of pain in our lives and in our hearts. And that can manifest in self-doubt as a writer. And my trick for, let me back up, I've gotten ahead of myself. The task of author promotion is sending you right into the things that are most uncomfortable, possibly. So it seems like it can be quite defeating for many authors when they realize their dream of getting their book picked up by a big publisher or even a small publisher. They realize that they are being sent into the thing that they are least comfortable with. And I think that there is a trick mentally to play on yourself to get around that discomfort. And that is, again, take the focus off of yourself and think about what you care about the most, what you love the most in your book. And be unabashed about your enthusiasm for those things in your book. And then suddenly it stops being about you. It starts being about something that you love. And most of us are able to talk with great enthusiasm about the things that we love. It's harder for us to talk about the things that we are proud of in ourselves. Those things in your book that you love are parts of yourself, obviously, but it just tricks the psyche a little bit to dislocate that praise elsewhere, if that makes sense. So think about the things that you love in your book, that you care about the most in your book, that you are most passionate about in your book. And I think that most people will read your passion about that as enthusiasm. And that is one easy way to talk about your book and to promote your book without seeming conceited, without setting yourself up for criticism or for feeling like an imposter. And now this lends itself more easily to some types of books that are filled with action and fun, books that have colorful world building. It's easier to talk passionately about the world that you've built. Now, what if your book is a very, very sensitive, heartfelt, serious, or quiet book? How do you do that? How do you turn that focus off of yourself and to something in your book and still remain full of energy when your book is a very quiet book? Don't think of it as enthusiasm then. You're not a cheerleader for your book. You are a passionate advocate. It stops being enthusiasm and it becomes passionate. If your book is about a particular cause, a particular life experience that you feel very, very strongly about, I think you'll understand what I mean when I say you just dislocate out of yourself. You are doing this for all the other kids out there that felt like this, that lived through this, that survived this. It stops being about you and it becomes about that thing in your book, that heart in the book, the nugget and the kernel that is so, so precious to you. Take the focus off of yourself, put it on something in the book, and then it becomes enthusiasm or passion rather than boastfulness. Related to the idea of imposter syndrome is we're trying to develop our author brand and looking at the endless things that you can be doing to promote yourself as an author. There are some self-care things you can think about. Ask yourself what forms of promotion you enjoy the most and focus on those things because you can fill your time with just those things. So if you prefer to do written interviews rather than spoken interviews, fine. Just say, I don't want to do spoken interviews. I don't feel comfortable. I don't feel my real self when I have to respond in real time. I am my real and best and highest self when I am able to write my answers and let the questions marinate. That's perfectly fine to say, and you can decline other opportunities. Live versus pre-recorded. Some of us get stage fright and we don't like live performances. That's fine. There are plenty of opportunities where you can pre-record them and even edit them if you want to. Panels versus solo presentations, that's something that is people have a very strong preference about. You can choose to do only one or the other. There's no reason why you have to do both. And I think that if you focus on those things, you'll find the infinite possibilities and obligations for author promotion to be a little bit less daunting. But I would also say, you know, we often say or hear, that's outside of my skill set, that's outside of my comfort zone, I have to be me. That's a very American concept. And I am an American, but I also am an immigrant American. And that idea, I have to be me, is a very, very American concept. And I would gently suggest that the idea of me should be a work in progress. The more that you think about these tricks, locating the energy in your public appearances and in your just talking about the book outside of yourself and in something that you care about in the book, the less you'll feel like you are bumping up against the borders of your skill set or your comfort zone, and the more that me will expand. And the other thing I would say is practice. Don't be afraid to practice. Don't be afraid to memorize. I was a litigation attorney for 10 years, so I was used to having to memorize a script and a branching script that could go in different directions based on what the judge or the opposing counsel would say, and I would have to commit it to memory so that I could speak the words with conviction. And I think you'll find that if you practice whatever you want to say about your work, it's armor. You are liberated. You are not thinking about what you have to say next. You're just thinking about how you can pour your heart into what you're saying. The words are already going to be there. The muscle memory will be there from practicing. That was a longer introduction than I expected. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to do a truncated version of my usual author presentation that I do either at bookstores or school events, and I'm going to do each section of the presentation, and then step back and explain to you the import of each of those sections. Okay, so first off, I arrive in costume, and I have props. This is the map that is the primary location for my current series of books, the P. Sprout Chen books. And the reason for them is that they already are carrying the brand identity for me without my even having to open my mouth. This says this is a fantasy world. This is a built world. This is a fully imagined world without my ever having to sink to the level of saying this is a very well imagined world. Okay, so I usually start off with an introduction, and I'm going to do that introduction now. Hi, I'm Henry Lian, and I am the author of the P. Sprout Chen middle grade fantasy series. And P. Sprout Chen is the story of a 14-year-old girl and her little brother who leave their homeland and come to a new country to study at a boarding school that teaches a very unusual sport that combines figure skating with kung fu. And the New York Times described it as Hermione Granger meets Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon meets The Ice Capades meets Mean Girls. And that's very accurate on a plot level, but the P. Sprout Chen books are also about some things that are very close to my heart. They're about immigration and they're about girl power. So I am an immigrant. I was born in Taiwan, and when I first came to the US, there were not, this is the 1970s, there were not many books that had characters that looked like me, which is usually not a good thing for a young growing mind. In my case, it was the best possible thing because I was a very overconfident, self-involved, selfish kid. So to be forced to have to read books about characters that didn't look like me, that didn't live like me, that had different values from me and had a completely different home life from me, that was the best possible thing for me as a child. And my childhood was infinitely richer because of that. And so these books are inspired by my own culture And in that way, they are a love letter to my homeland, but they're also a thank you letter to America. I'm saying thank you, America, for sharing Little Women with me. Thank you for sharing all of these wonderful books I would never have known if I had never left my country. Thank you, and here's a little bit of my culture in return. And they're also about girl power. I believe in homework, and I believe in doing my research. So when I came up with the idea of Kung Fu figure skating, I didn't want to make it wacky because I'm not into wacky. I wanted to invest it with gravity and heft and granular detail. And so I actually took 6 months of Kung Fu and figure skating lessons. And I came into those lessons and I thought, okay, I'm a pretty fit guy. How hard can this be? Famous last words, always. How hard can this be? I was so appallingly bad at both Kung Fu and figure skating. So in figure skating class, I was constantly falling down. By the second class, these young kids, mostly young girls, were skating around me like minnows in water. And I was on my butt every class. In Kung Fu class, I was paired with the smallest student in the class to do exercises, a 19-year-old, 80-pound woman. And we would be assigned an exercise, and she would pull it off flawlessly. And then I would try, and I would go crashing into the wall. I tore my hamstring. And it was freaky and it was frustrating. And I thought, what is going on? I'm not going to be able to write this Kung Fu figure skating book. Then I realized that I had just plucked these two sports out of the air because I thought it would be fun to mash them together in one convenient place for my own reading pleasure. I had happened to pick two sports that reward balance and flexibility far more than brute strength. So I realized that this was an invented sport that rewards girl power and kid power, rewards the ways that bodies are built differently, and shows that being small in some contexts is a huge advantage. So I realized that the actual themes of the book were that seeming disadvantage is just advantage turned upside down, and that heroes come in all shapes and sizes. So doing this research actually gave the book a huge heart that I didn't know it had. But that's a lot of talk. And instead of talking more, I'm going to read you a little bit from the first Peace Sprout Chen book. Pause. Okay, so I've just set up the I've given the introduction. And I've set up what I'm about to do. I've done a number of things here. I've identified what the plot is succinctly. I quoted the New York, so the identification of the plot is for everybody. It's for kids, it's for parents, librarians, teachers, the gatekeepers. Tell them what this is about, emphasize the thing that is most memorable about the book so that they have a hook. Next, I quote the New York Times. That's for the gatekeepers, the teachers, librarians, and parents. They will know what the New York Times is, they will know what the ice capades were, they will know the references that the kids won't. That's directed at the parents because they are the purchasers, even if they are not the end user. Then I talk about a personal story, a humorous story of my own horrific experiences researching this book. Again, bringing humor in to soften the audience up and get them on my side by some goodwill. And in the process, I'm telling the audience, I'm a guy who is not afraid to laugh at myself. That's part of my author brand. I don't know if I would call it humbleness, but it is playfulness. Playful is part of my author brand. I've conveyed that without having to say that. I've demonstrated it with this anecdote. But the anecdote leads into the lessons that I learned from those horrible figure skating and Kung Fu lessons. And the lessons are very heartfelt. I missed the part about immigration. That is also directed at the gatekeepers. I mean, no kid's going to say, "Oh, I want to read that book because it's about immigration." No, this is for the gatekeepers that want to expose their kids to nutritive content. And so to get back to the part about why I told that anecdote, I led into the themes that arose out of that experience. And that is to speak to the girls in the audience. We have so many books that are written, so many action books that are written for boys, and so many girls who have had their whole lives to read those books starring boys. This is my way to say, this one's for you. And boys, I'm going to show you that you want to read this book about a girl too. So that's all the subtext of that initial introduction. I'm trying to convey a bit of myself, a bit of the books, and they are actually the same thing. The flavor of my author brand is very consistent with the flavor of the books. All right, so now I launch into the part where I read a short chapter, which I will truncate for you because I've gone on too long. Peace Chen, Future Legend of Skate and Sword, Chapter 1. I commit this venture to the Imperium of Shin. I commit this venture to the Radiant Empress Dowager. Today, I, Chen Peacesprout, sail into the city of Pearly. The city that looks as if it were made of milky porcelain. The city that looks as if it were poured, not built. The city that is always busy with racing, jumping skaters from the smooth white boulevards to the sweeping white roofs. I, Chen Peacesprout, a girl from the village of Serenity Cliff in Shuishan Province of the shining empire of Xin, sail today into the city of legend. The ship docks at a jetty made of white filigree. I skate down the disembarking rail with the other passengers. Everything here is made out of the substance that they call the pearl. Even though the whole city is ribboned with waterfalls and fed with canals, the pearl itself, it's dry and it never melts. The Academy Scroll says that the gondolas are the easiest way over the sea to the string of islets on which the Academy sits, but I have to board them before they stop running at sunset. I am blocking the main path of the boardwalk, so I skate off to the side and huddle next to a series of pungent bats that must belong to some sort of stinky vinegar tofu factory. I notice two boys in official-looking uniforms watching me. I bow to them and say, "Hail, brothers!" "Brothers," they say together, then laugh. What is there to laugh at? "Sit in, man," says one, a compact, square-shaped boy. "Please," I say, "I have to get to the rail gondola towers before the sun sets." "You're not going anywhere until we approve your payment." I hand him my scroll, confirming acceptance into the Academy. "No good," he says, handing it back to me. "No seal." "What seal? Nobody told me I needed to get a seal." "No seal, no admittance further into our city." "Where do I get a seal?" "If you're Chilean, you have to get the seal from the office of the Minister of Culture for your province." "Where might that be?" I ask, trying to keep my voice even. I'm gonna miss the last gondola. The boy squints at the setting sun. "If you start swimming now, you might get back in time to see the rest of your class graduate." This can't be. The Empress Dowager would have provided me any necessary documents. I noticed the words on the boy's sashes. "1, best quality, auspicious golden dragon, discount Wu Academy and Noodle House." My heart fills with 1,000 throbbing fists. These boys aren't officials. They're just students as well, like me. I know I should just skate away, but I want to teach them a lesson. "Hey, what's in the basket? Bombs?" The boy grasps for my basket. I enter into the single toe kick, double the butterfly spinning leap, ending with a diagonal toe kick that connects with the boy's forearm. The force of my kick sends his hand slapping against his own shoulder. The pearl here is so smooth, so responsive. I stand with my skates biting deep into the surface, my palms crossed in blade position, ready for more combat. The boys circle out to either side of me and then charge. I launch into a defensive move, the iron parasol spin. I split my legs above me, my skates rotating in a deadly circle that spins faster and faster. The boys scrape backward from my flashing blades, but the bills have too much momentum, and now they're sliding toward me. When they're about to meet the steel, I pull in my skates, channel the gathered chi energy of my spin, and use my knees to knock them back. The boys land on the edge of the vat of stinky tofu. They spiral their arms and pedal their feet wildly to keep from falling into the stew. I leap up, balance my skates on the edge of the vat between them, and grab the fronts of their robes in my fists. On the horizon, the bottom edge of the sun is nearly touching the water. Where are the rail gondolas to the academy? The boys answer only with sneers. I'm going to ask each of you where the rail gondolas are. And you'd better say the same thing, or you're both going into that vat. Now, whisper in my ear. I bend my ear to the slimmer boy first. You first, he says. It's to the east, just past the Dolphin Embassy's water court. I bend my ear to the square-shaped boy. He spits out, your ancestors leaked out of rancid turtle egg, shinny, and pig. I release the boys, straighten my rope, and perform a double jump, double knee, tornado kick. I send them both flying into the vat of stinky tofu. So that is Pea Sprout's first day at her new school in her new country. Not a good first day, but throughout the rest of the year and the rest of the book, she comes to find a sense of place in this strange alien world, and she learns a very important lesson. And that lesson is that just because you're not from here doesn't mean that you don't belong here. Great, pause. So what I've done there with that reading is I've selected a passage that gives them a representative core sample of the book. There is a lot of action, there's a lot of humor in the book. It's very, very fast paced, and I've given them that. So I've warned them, hopefully enticed them about the type of book that this is. I've also kind of addressed the girl book versus boy book issue. This is a book that stars a female character, a titular female character that any boy would want to read because it's got kick-ass action. So that's what I'm trying to convey with this selection as well. I also bring up the weightier themes of immigration and discrimination in a natural way that arises out of the plot situation. So for the gatekeepers there, it's saying that this is a way to introduce these topics without losing your focus on the human scale, without it becoming polemical and pedantic. This is about the intimate and personal experience of immigration and discrimination. If you want to introduce your kids to these ideas, this is a Trojan horse method to do that. This book is meant to be very entertaining, but by the end of it, maybe they have learned something, and maybe that something will stick better because they weren't being lectured to. That is the reason why this passage is chosen. I deliver it in a very animated fashion. And again, that is consistent with my author brand. The idea of enthusiasm, I can't tell you how powerful it is. The world just flings open doors when they see you having fun, when they see you amusing yourself, not even thinking about whether people are liking this or not. When they see somebody smiling and having fun, it's contagious, and it makes the world your friend. So that's the reason I do these readings in such an enthusiastic way. It just buys you so much goodwill. Now that takes a lot of work. I basically memorized that passage, and that's a lot to memorize, but it does help with some of the blocking and the choreography to help me remember where I am. And there's enough going on there that you could also buy yourself some margin for error because there are things for them to concentrate on besides the words that you might have fumbled. Okay, so the last part of it is a song. So I'm going back into character, into the presentation. So all of these lessons that Peace Sprout had to learn at Pearl Famous Academy of Skate and Sword, all these very important life lessons and all of this very heartfelt growing up that she had to do were all encapsulated in a song that she heard on the very first day of arriving at the school. And it's called the Pearly New Year's song. And I'm gonna play for you now. But I'm gonna apologize first because the song, I'm not a songwriter, I am not a singer, I am not a musician. And at the book, anybody know who Idina Menzel is? Frozen, Wicked, Rent, Glee. She actually sang the song at my book launch. So that's kind of intimidating to follow up, to be the follow-up act for Idina Menzel. But I wanted to do this, and I wanted to learn this instrument, which I didn't even know the name of before I wrote these books. This is called a sanshin in Mandarin, or sanshin in Japanese, or sanxian in Mandarin. And I didn't know that before writing the books because I had never heard of this instrument, much less played it or any other stringed instrument like a guitar, banjo, or ukulele. But I did this for kids like you because I wanted to show you it's important to try things that you're afraid of and that your enthusiasm in trying them is more important than being perfect. So that's just my long way of saying, this is not going to be very good. Please go easy on me. All right, this is called the Pearly New Year song. If I learned just one thing, then the year has not been wasted. If I traded one illusion for a revelation, if I kept just one friend, then the year has not been wasted. May we meet here in the new year. May we meet here in Pearl. If I kept just one friend, the year has not been wasted. May we meet here in the new year. May we meet here in the New Year, maybe here in the New Year, maybe here in Pearl. Maybe meet here in Pearl. Maybe meet here in Pearl. Thank you. May we meet here in the new year. May we meet here in Pearl. All right, pause. So what I've done there is a couple of things. I'm a moderator. I realize that it's 5:40. I am keeping an eye on that. Thank you. So what I've done there is I've expressed that this is a built fantasy world. I cannot make many of the things in this world that are as vivid as they would be in that world, but I can make the song, and the song would be the same in their world as in our world. So that is one thing that I'm trying to convey with that. And I also have all of these self-deprecating provisos at the beginning. Again, they're to lower expectations. They're to strengthen the idea of my author brand about playfulness, and the very important message that it is more important. It is important to try things that you are afraid of, and it's more important to be enthusiastic about them and to throw yourself into that than to be perfect, which is consistent with what I'm talking about today. So. That's, I know I'm out of time now, so I'm going to cut it short right there and open it up to some questions. That's a little bit of a view into how I've approached author branding. I did think a lot about what differentiates me and how that is aligned with the book. And I locate a lot of that enthusiasm outside of myself and in the books. And I think, I mean, you tell me, I think that it comes across not as being self-aggrandizing or being boastful, but just a guy who loves what he's doing. And hopefully that's contagious. So at this point, maybe we can open it up to some questions. How do we do that? Make this full screen.
Yeah, Henry. Either you can. I've been monitoring the chat, so I have a few that I can pick out for you.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a lot of. So we've been having a lot of good comments here, and so I'll just try to cover as many as I can. Please understand if I'm not able to get to yours in particular. So the first one someone mentioned, Joe mentioned, is there a? He said, "This is wonderful. Is there a companion document to this, like handout, so that kind of like we can make this into like a like a work session or things like that, right?"
Well, I mean, there's a rough outline. I mean, I actually just came up with. I had a script and I threw the script away this morning, and I just wrote this a quick outline at the last minute because I like making things stressful for myself. I can share that if you want to. If anybody wants to email me, send me an email at info@henrylien.com. That's info@henrylien.com. I'll be happy to share the outline with you, and I'll take some time to pad it out a little bit. But thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, I just dropped that email into the Discord in case anyone wants to check it out.
Great, thank you.
Yeah. The next question someone asked, I thought this was really helpful as well. Just give me a second to get back to it. Sorry, a moment here. Sorry, I had to, when I entered it, it brought me all the way down to the bottom again, so I have to come back up. Oh, I think I found it. So, okay, I think this question was really is really useful. Are there particular industry expectations around certain kinds of promotion that are non-negotiable?
Let me think about that. No, there are not. I can think of an exception to every one. Certainly, there are pillars that a book launch, being open to interviews. I can think of at least one example of an author who has a career as an author who has said, no, I cannot do that. So for every pillar of promotion in the publishing industry, I can think of at least one author that said, no, I won't do that.
Awesome. Next question comes from Fabio. He says, I'm an ESL writer trying to break out into the US market, and that fact keeps preventing me from diving head on into it. How to create a brand when literally nobody knows you in that market? So I guess it's coming from an ESL perspective. There's an extra barrier there.
Okay, so I think well, there are two possibilities there. So I don't know if Fabio is located in the U.S. and is concerned about things that are actually in person. If that is the issue, I think the world has changed in the last 2 months. The author tours and the bookstore appearances and all those live appearances, who knows if they're going to come back in the way that they did. Certainly they were staples of author promotion before. We are right now at this very moment exploring a very viable alternative to that. And I would say if it's geographical distance that is a concern, that has suddenly ceased to be concerned. If it's a language difference, I don't know how to answer that, except if your material that you are working on is personal about your own heritage and your own background, you buy yourself so much goodwill by emphasizing this is an immigrant's viewpoint, or this is an international viewpoint, and you emphasize that yes, my English might not be perfect, and I hold that up as a badge of courage because I mastered this language not because I grew up in it and learned it painlessly. I mastered this language through great effort. So if the issue is fear of your command of English, I would say embrace that, especially if that is part one of the themes of your writing. Embrace that, absolutely. And I think people will be will give you the benefit of the doubt if that is what you're talking about.
So the next question comes from Amy. She says, how do you balance being authentic / vulnerable with being professional / respectable? I know that sometimes when successful authors open up about their struggles, insecurities, imposter syndrome, I find it comforting or inspiring, but I'm guessing that that level of honesty can also make people feel uncomfortable.
That's a really, really good question. I think it actually depends on what you feel comfortable with and why you are sharing that part of yourself. Is it relevant to what you're writing? If it is, I think it actually lends you authenticity to say, yeah, I have crippling depression, or I have an anxiety disorder. I'm writing an own voices book. I think it's very relevant if it is part of your book. If it is not part of your book, then I would say, ask yourself why you are bringing it up. If it's to if it's to avert or preemptively diffuse any criticism that you might receive because you're not as polished as you would be, that can be played off, but it's a matter of tone. I mean, are you charming about it? And I know that's not helpful. I mean, how can you bottle charm? It comes down to how you play it off. If you're doing it because you're trying to buy yourself some goodwill, I don't know. I think so. Ask yourself what your reactions to a similar sentiment on social media have been. If you have posted something saying, "I feel like a fraud today," what kind of responses do you get? Do you get kind and supportive responses? Do you ever get people that say, "Oh, come on, stop complaining and thinking about yourself"? Whatever those social media responses are, expect that to be what the public response would be. As an author to expressing that. I know that that's not very helpful. I will think about it more. And if you would like to talk about it more, please feel free to email me.
So Lady Shensa and me have been having this back and forth about what we suspect your costume is. I thought it might be a variation on the Zhongshan suit, but I'm not really sure. Can you go into why you chose that costume, what it says, and maybe the cultural significance?
Yes, it was actually meant to be a modified gakuran. A gakuran is a Japanese schoolboy's jacket, which is actually modeled on Prussian 19th century Prussian cadet military academy uniforms. And the reason for that is that I wanted to create something that was I wanted to when I come into the room, I want to convey that I have deliberately chosen to make myself a representative of this world, so that it's culturally consistent with the world. But there actually is a very particular plot reason why I chose this type of jacket. In Japanese schools, and the Peace Sprout Champ books are based on Taiwanese history and culture. It is not Taiwan, but it is Taiwan inflected. And Taiwan is a polyglot culture. It is ethnically Chinese, but was ruled by Japan for 50 years. So my parents have Japanese names, and they speak Japanese, and they grew up listening to Japanese music and going to Japanese schools. So it's kind of like the New Orleans of East Asia. It is a mix. And so there are a lot of Japanese influences in there, but there's a particular plot reason why this jacket was important. The Gakuran jacket in Japanese schools has a number of buttons, and mine are slightly different because this is actually a Donna Karan jacket, not an accurate Gakuran. I couldn't find one in my size, but this the second button, if you can see that flashing there, the second button in the traditional Gakuran jacket is given as a token of love. And so when somebody wants to propose that you go steady, that you become a couple, you take off, you rip off the second button and you give it to your beloved, because the second button is closest to the heart. And there's a very, very important book, a very important point in the second book. And I knew that going in, writing the first book. It's a very, very important point in the second book where somebody is seen without that second button. And it means so much just to see that second button gone. So it is not a Jonestown jacket, but it is intended to be a modified Gakura.
That's really awesome. So it looks like we're at
part of my author brand.
Yeah. So it looks like we're at 5:50. So now is the time we'll probably want to start cycling in the next panelists. Thank you, Henry, so much for being a part of this.
Thank you.
And, yeah.